Senator McDonald, you back online?
Yes, yep. Senator Sterle, I am.
Great, thank you very much. Now I welcome Mrs. Janet Cooper from Livestock and Rural Transporters Association of Western Australia. And for the Hansard record, if you could please give your name and state the capacity in which you appear today.
Janet Francis Cooper. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Livestock and Rural Transport Association of Western Australia.
Thanks, Jane. I'm going to ask you to make an opening statement, and then Senator McDonald will certainly have questions for you, and I will too.
Okay, thanks, Senator. I guess all we want to do today is to really talk to some of the points that we have already made in our submission. Obviously, we're very appreciative of the opportunity to participate today, and thank you in particular, Senator Sterle, because we know you are a champion of our industry, so we appreciate that very much. I guess, as we said in our submission, we remain to be convinced that there is a nexus between rates and road safety. We don't believe that's been proved yet. We don't believe there is evidence that suggests that even if the rates were higher, that drivers or owner-drivers would spend that additional money on safety-related matters, and we support competition and flexibility. But what we do want is a reasonably level playing field. And I think we have quite a few examples of non-compliant businesses undercutting compliant businesses. And we think that that is an area that should come under a certain amount of scrutiny. A mantra in our association is that you shouldn't have to break the law in order to compete. And as recently as yesterday, I have calls from members who are complaining about having to compete with people that are non-compliant and they're not being held accountable. We also think that the transport industry is not homogenous. We accept that the rural transport sector is structured differently to general freight. We like to think that our sector is flexible and innovative and shifts to meet demand, and that solutions in one sector may be a problem in another and also between states. So, I think this was one of the issues that we highlighted with the RSRT, that there were some consequences that probably weren't foreseen in that process that impacted on rural transporters in particular. I've got a number of other points to make in relation to the terms of reference, but I don't know whether you want me to just keep on going or to stop, Jan, Senator.
I'd like you to get everything on the record that you want to, because Senator McDonald and I take notes as we go.
Okay.
Then we'll come back. Otherwise, we'll get to a stage where you might walk out here and say, "Damn, I forgot to put that on." So
fair enough.
Keep going.
Okay. And we also had some doubts about whether the IR system was the appropriate place to deal with business-to-business relationships. Having said that, we consider that there are arrangements that could quite properly be dealt with by the IR system. Buying a truck and getting an ABN doesn't necessarily make you a business owner. And I think there are operators in this category where the contractual arrangements are more akin to an employer and employee arrangement, and they should be put under some sort of scrutiny because they are often the ones that are driving rates down. They frequently don't have an understanding of the costs involved in running a business. They might not have a good understanding of the rules, such as allowable mass rules. So as a consequence, they offer to carry things for a low rate. They put more on their vehicle than they should, and they are undercutting the compliant people. So we think a closer examination of those arrangements might uncover some of the causes of low rates in the industry. Payment terms is also another issue that we feel quite strongly about. The Small Business Ombudsman has already identified that in some instances payment terms are out to 120 days, and that's not sustainable for any small business to have principal contractors using their businesses as a source of credit. It's clearly something that businesses on low margins of, a lot of our businesses are 5 to 10% margins. You cannot sustain payment times being pushed out beyond what they are. And we know the Ombudsman recommended legislation to set a maximum payment time for business-to-business transactions, and I believe that was rejected by the government, which we were disappointed in, because we think this is also one of the major concerns for viability of road transport businesses. Turning now to the development and maintenance of road transport infrastructure. The top of our list is parking bays, which we refer to as safety bays. We have been on this path for, 15 years in my recollection with, in my experience with the association. We just need more. And it's an ongoing battle to get better and more parking bays in regional Western Australia, and not necessarily on the main freight routes, but on some of the less frequently used freight routes in rural areas. We've also got a bit of a policy about the clearing of vegetation on road reserves. That becomes an issue, a safety issue, and we recognise that a lot of these things are state responsibilities, but we feel it's important to get them on the record. I think that speaks for itself, clearing vegetation, but it is one of those issues that seems to be an obstacle that's difficult to overcome. And probably one of the most significant issues for us in terms of efficiency and indirectly safety is connectivity and last mile issues. We can't understand why there isn't more emphasis put on a connected freight network. We have significant routes into Perth transport hubs where they're not connected. You have to break down on the outskirts of Perth and ferry freight in, which has obvious implications for additional truck movements on the road. It has implications for fatigue, and it's just plainly inefficient. And we just, I guess, bewildered a little bit as to why policymakers don't put more emphasis on that. It seems an obvious one. If there are barriers in the geography of the road, or whatever the reason might be, then fix them, is our response. That should be a priority. To not be able to come down Greenmount Hill, Bedfordale Hill, not be able to bring road trains to Mewshade, despite being promised over many years that would happen, is just a no-brainer, I suppose, in our view. There are also breaks in the network between shires. We have an issue where some shires are truck friendly, others are not. And some will give access to extra mass or certain combinations and others won't. So it means that you can get to the border of a shire, but you can't get much further with a combination. So again, there are efficiency issues there. As far as maintenance of the road network goes, we elaborated significantly in our submission about maintenance issues, but in summary, I think we believe that there should be greater supervision of how the allocated funding is spent. It needs to find its way onto the road network when it's allocated for the road network, and the quality of the maintenance needs to be supervised better than it is at the moment, because there are examples, again, some shires do it well, some not so well, but there are plenty of reports of maintenance lasting 12 months. It might get through a harvest season if you're lucky, but that's about it. The other issue is urban planning. We see examples of residential planning being built, or residential buildings being constructed right up to the edge of a freight network, and then we get into this tension between residential amenity and the needs of the freight industry. and most often the freight industry loses out in that battle. So, you know, again, we can't believe that, you know, if we have a freight route that is designated as a freight route, then the freight should get priority. The final point I wanted to make in that section is in relation to driver facilities. We are working closely with others in the industry to try and upgrade driver facilities, but they're in a woeful state. And
talking toilets and
toilets and showers, and all we're talking is just basic toilets and showers. We're not looking for the Taj Mahal.
Sorry, Cam. Sorry. Come up closer. You're all right, mate. Oh, okay. Sorry, Jan.
That's
Get your photo taken.
That's all right. I'm used to that.
Side. 360 degrees is Jan's best side. There's no worries. Sorry, Jan. Don't be distracted.
Yeah, so we're not looking for anything like the Taj Mahal. We just want basic facilities. We'll get on to driver training and shortages, but there is no way we are going to attract more women into the industry when there is not basic facilities. But, you know, this is 2020 and it's really hard to understand why we treat truck drivers the way we do. We have examples where depots and facilities at the end of a transport route where there is nowhere for drivers to shower or even go to the toilet. We have grain bins where there is nowhere. They have to camp there overnight in order to be there for the scheduled appointment time in the morning, but they have no facilities. It you know, defies human understanding.
It does, yeah, that's right.
And there's no care factor. When we raise this with people, it's, you know, well, you're not our clients. So I think that's an area where we need to pay a little bit of attention as well. Sorry, just moving through here. So moving on to the training and career pathways terms of reference, it's very clear that we need more and better training of truck drivers. We're ambivalent about whether it should be a apprenticeship or traineeship or some other mechanism. Again, we've been working with industry to try and improve that side of things, and thank you, Senator Sterle, for your leadership in that area. But we need funding to continue the programs that we've got in mind. You know, a couple of aspects stick out in relation to training and driver shortage, and that is obviously the cost of getting a licence is high. In the regions, we have some additional barriers that, and this is perhaps more related to getting drivers to the regions rather than the training aspect, but there is a bit of a connection. But in regional areas, housing is not that flash, so it's hard to get families to move to the regions. The education facilities, you know, once the kids get to high school age, then they usually want to move back to a hub where the schooling is more appropriate. And if we were to get some sort of a training program up and running, we very strongly believe there should be a on-the-job component to that.
Yeah, this is music to my ears. Yes, keep going, Jane.
But in order to make that happen, there does need to be some financial support along the way. I mean, the trainee will need financial support, they will need accommodation subsidies, but the employer who's doing the on-the-job training will need support too, because there is no doubt an impact on productivity while they're training or helping to train a young driver, or any driver for that matter. We also think the age restrictions need to be addressed. We need a graduated program that ignores age in favour of training and experience. And, you know, it might be that we have a probationary system for drivers. I think the industry is mature enough to deal with that. I think there's a lot of experienced drivers who are very happy to help out people that are new to the industry, and if they had someone said the other day, if they had a P plate, someone would, people would look out for them, and they would learn from those people as well. I think that's probably, we've covered that in our submission, but they're sort of the points that we wanted to highlight. In relation to the efficient cost recovery measures for stakeholders, WA has a system for owner-driver payments, but it's our view that transporters are reluctant to use that unless they're on their way out of the industry, because it does damage, you make a complaint, then your chances of picking up work from that person again are fairly minimal, but also your reputation in the industry can gather a certain odium, I suppose. We are a small pool in Western Australia, and word travels fast. The unfair contract provisions in the law are also not easy to enforce, and like the WA system, we operate in a small pool, and the same problems exist about your reputation. We think that maybe an education campaign about what protections already exist, an education campaign within the industry might be useful, because I'm not sure that everyone knows what their rights and obligations are in relation to contracts. And principal contractors should take more responsibility for third-party contractual arrangements. And we do have examples in Western Australia where there are principal contractors who let a subcontract to a couple of key subcontractors, and those subcontractors will let further contracts, and those ones further down the line are often on extremely low margins, may not have the wherewithal to say, no, I'm not doing that work. Yeah. And then they are subjected to very long payment terms as well. So, there's a snowball effect there as well. In relation to technologies and advancements in vehicle design, etc., I guess our view on this one is fairly simple, in that we believe transporters make huge investments in modern vehicles with the latest technology, and they are not getting the benefit of that investment. When access decisions are made, that the innovations in those vehicles are not taken into account. And so I think, they're left wondering why 20th century thinking is being applied to 21st century vehicles. In relation to the consultative relationships between the road transport industry and government, well, I think...
Don't hold back, Jan. You won't upset me. I'm a truck driver first before anything else. Say it as it is.
Well, we believe this is extremely important. We have a good relationship with main roads in Western Australia, but we also have plenty of examples where government departments do make decisions about what they believe is good for the industry, what they believe will make the industry more efficient, without consulting with the industry and finding out if that's actually what the case may be. And I think, safety bays are a good example. We call truck bays safety bays because we believe that's what they are. They're a good example where they're sited sometimes, they're built on an incline, and, the drivers say, well, all the blood's going to rush to my head if I sleep there. Yeah. Or they're put at the bottom of a hill and they're reluctant to stop there because pulling out and going up the hill is not optimum. Road design and location of roundabouts is just another small example. So it's vitally important that industry is involved, and industry, when I say industry, I mean a very close connection to the people who are actually doing the job. Not those who might, represent perhaps the big end of town, for example. We need to get to the people at the coalface.
Absolutely, and that's the whole crux of this inquiry. I want to hear from the men and women who are doing this. Yeah. Yep.
So I think that probably brings to a conclusion the comments that I'd like to make. Thanks, Senator.
Thanks, Chairman. I've got a number of questions I'd like to raise, but Senator McDonald, would you like to open the batting from our side?
thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. Cooper, for your presentation. It was very comprehensive, and I think will be of great use to us in developing our report and recommendation. I wanted to start particularly with the livestock element of your industry. And I guess, I mean, in Queensland, our problem is that the state government doesn't build enough effluent disposal points, and I'm assuming that that's the same problem. I read in your submission that you've raised the same issue. Do you want to expand on the importance of effluent disposal and the safety implications to both the transporters and the general public of getting this right?
Yes, thanks, Senator McDonald. We perhaps have a slightly different view about effluent to some of our colleagues in the other states. And I know there is a witness later on this afternoon who would love to explain to you his views on effluent, who is on our committee as well. Most of our problem with effluent relates to the way the animals are prepared for transport, and we are working and continue to work with the livestock industry to try and improve that side of things. In a state the size of Western Australia, having sufficient effluent dumps is going to be very, very difficult, and so we're a little bit, I guess, reluctant to push the idea of effluent dumps for fear that it will leave transporters in a vulnerable position, having to, with an expectation that they will put effluent tanks on their trucks and then find somewhere to empty them. We don't believe that, well, we think we're a very long way off to ever having a network of effluent dumps that would satisfy that, because I'm told the tanks, they are full within the first 2 hours of a journey. So we would need effluent dumps on a very regular basis along our livestock routes. We think it's probably better to get the animals prepared properly and to accept that there will always be some effluent falling from livestock vehicles. And, you know, perhaps it's not quite such a bad thing. Having said that, in those areas where there is a public amenity problem, as I believe there is in Roma in Queensland, then I think, you know, they're the areas where we should pay attention to, and we can probably implement some mitigating factors to overcome the damage that might be done to the public amenity there.
Thank you, and yes, you make a good point about Roma and pretty well any of the abattoir centres where there's a real confluence of cattle or sheep, I guess, coming in. I want to talk about the dedicated freight routes, how they work in producing better returns and how they contribute to road safety.
So I guess the principal benefit is that it's reducing the number of truck movements on the road. It's reducing the amount of time a driver spends in a truck going backwards and forwards from a point where they've had to break up. And that has an obvious consequence for fatigue as well. So I think it's reasonably, it's not that complicated in terms of how it improves efficiency.
So would expanding key livestock freight routes be beneficial to the industry? And how would they work in conjunction with existing key freight corridors?
So probably our livestock routes are not such a problem as our grain routes might be. We do have a key issue in the southwest of the state where there's something like an 80-kilometre round trip that has to be made to get into an abattoir and a feedlot, and you know, that is clearly ridiculous when there is a route that can be taken. But most of our problems relate to grain routes and last mile issues, trying to get grain off farm on a larger high productivity network. And you know, we would be happy to look at using conditions in order to do that for the period that it's necessary, but there are quite a few obstacles to doing that.
Thank you. I want to ask about people exploiting their concessional registration. You've spoken about that in your submission. What is the cost to industry of that happening, and is it a concern for safety?
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part. The cost?
Is it a concern for safety?
Unfortunately, I couldn't really tell you what the cost is. I think it's indirectly a concern for safety, because those that are prepared to exploit that concession, I think, may be also people that might not be quite as concerned about the maintenance of their vehicles and that side of things as well. I mean, there are rural farmer concessions for registration for very good reason, but they shouldn't be carting commercially under those concessions. But the safety side is probably not quite so consequential.
So yesterday and earlier today, we've had some discussion about the usefulness of the introduction of an apprenticeship scheme to the transport industry. Can you expand on, you know, the benefits or otherwise of utilising an apprenticeship to attract young people and to improve the professionalism of new people coming into the industry?
Yeah, so I'm not certain that an apprenticeship is necessarily the vehicle that we want to use, but assuming we did use an apprenticeship, the two key benefits would obviously be an improvement in the quality of the training, and an apprenticeship always has with it an on-the-job component. And I think it would probably, some higher status in training would raise the reputation of the industry, and would therefore be, we'd have a better chance of attracting younger people to the industry. That would of course require us to do something about the age barriers that exist currently. But at the moment, it's not a career of choice, because by the time kids reach the age where they could get an MC licence, they've gone off and done something else and committed to another career path. So I think the two benefits would be the reputation of truck driving as an industry to get into, and obviously we would have better trained drivers.
Thank you. I finally want to talk to you about the use of products like the Guardian Seeing Eye and other camera mechanisms. What is your section of the industry's views on utilising those to improve safety?
By and large, our members don't have any difficulty with using that type of technology on a voluntary basis if they see a need for it in their business. There is some scepticism about requiring it in order to gain access to certain roads. I think that's probably sums up their attitude to some of that technology. I mean, most of them have got got the technology, but they're not that supportive of being forced to have it.
Could you just expand a little bit more on being required to have it to access some roads? Are some roads designated to require the technology to be on board?
Yeah, so we've got an example here in Western Australia where one of the hills that industry would like access to, there is I don't think industry is sure whether it's a trail or what it is, and I'm not talking about Greenmount here, I'm talking about Welshpool. There is a company that has access down that road, and there's a requirement to have seeing eye machines and a range of other technology, forward and rear facing cameras and a couple of other things. And I think there's some doubt about what the purpose of that is. You know, I think there's possibly a feel-good factor involved on the regulator's part in demanding that be used.
I understand. All right, and I just want to acknowledge your comments too about vegetation management on designated roads. It's something that, you know, has come up frequently in Queensland, and I can't believe there are other states that are so equally affected. It just seems crazy, doesn't it, to put vegetation management over road safety. But I really appreciate your evidence today, Ms Cooper. Thanks for your time, and back to you, Chair.
Thanks, Senator.
Thanks, Senator McDonald. So, Jen, there's a few things I want to go through. I'll chuck a curveball at you for you. That's all right. You don't have to answer. No, you don't have to answer. Because, you see, when government stopped us learning at the hip of our old man or our uncle or our big brother, they really have created a void there, and they haven't taken any action. And it really infuriates me because I learned at the hip of the old man. So just thought I'd throw that out. It'd be nice if they said, okay, we've now stopped this, so we're going to fill the void and put some decent money that our industry pays their way, and yet we don't have it coming back. There you go. That wasn't painful,
don't think we'd have any quarrel.
No, we've got no quarrel. In fact, I go through your submission. We have no quarrel. I just think that the industry is all at the same train station, but some are on a different train. But guess what? They want to get to the same train station at the end of the day. So I want to throw a few questions at you along this. Firstly, I'm from that part of the argument where no one will convince me otherwise that I believe rates and safety are intrinsically linked, and I would love the opportunity, if I could meet with your executive, to share my views with your executive. Okay?
Thank you.
I'd love to.
Well, certainly we can arrange that.
Thank you, and I appreciate we have different views, and I think if we all get in the same room and start talking, we all sit there and think, well, what the hell are we arguing about? So, anyway, that's great, thank you. So let's go to your submission, and I'm really keen to get the association's view on this. Help me out here. Operators who are really employees should not be competing with genuine businesses. Just, it's on the last page, Jan. Mm-hmm. It's at the top of at the top of the page. It's the conclusion, yep. And there's 4 dot points. So walk me through that, how that happens in the livestock industry. Sorry, I keep saying livestock, but I know that nowadays you're livestock and rural transport. Yeah. But are we predominantly talking livestock on this?
No, in fact,
okay. All right.
In fact, we're probably not even talking about our own industry here. We're talking more broadly.
Oh, good. Okay, all right. Just fill me in on what.
I think we have a view, and it goes back to the comment about, buying a truck and getting an ABN doesn't make you a business operator. I think there is a significant portion of people who buy a truck, don't understand the costs of running a business. They do things, they get into the industry, they offer their services, they don't know how to price their services, yeah. And so they offer to transport things at a very low rate. They don't understand that there are rules they have to comply with in order to do that, and so they put more mass on than probably they should, so they can carry more for a cheaper rate, and they are competing with the ones that are trying to do the right thing. So I'm not sure if you looked at those arrangements, that they would pass the subcontract test. You know, I think they might be closer to an employee-employer arrangement if they're working for the one contractor all the time. And I think there's sort of a bit of convenience in there to have them use an ABN.
Right, now I'm with you.
And I think that causes some of our problems that we're dealing with here with the rates.
That's really cleared that up for me, because there are a couple of high-profile cases. Let me tell you, Jan, my desk in Canberra is full of, I'd say this all the time, this industry is full of some of the most magnificent people you could ever wish to meet, and the majority of our industry is. But by crikey, we've got some trash bags out there, and the ABN one is a classic example. That does explain that to me. Yeah,
I think just to add, I think there are obvious safety implications with that, because when they're cutting everything right down to the wire, and they have no idea what they should be doing, they're not putting it into new tyres and things like that.
The examples I have are where the supplier, and there's a number of high profile, let's take Bosky Transport, and I've got no fear of mentioning Bosky Transport. This is the bottom of the barrel. Okay, and they are the bottom of the barrel. Trust me, they've got some mates next to them at the bottom of the swamp who have used ABNs, supplied the vehicle, that's where I got a bit confused. The drivers who had the ABNs didn't purchase the vehicle. They just had the ABN, were treated as subcontractors. And I won't leave out Queensland Logistics Services, who are just as bad. I could go on all day, but that does clear that up. And I don't care about parliamentary privilege, because I say the same everywhere in Australia I go. Yet to be challenged. All right, so the other one I just wanted to clear with you, regulation should be applied fairly and evenly to all players in the market, so that non-compliant operators not gain an advantage over the compliant operators. And you touched on that in your opening statement. But can you give me examples of what they're actually doing out there?
I'm trying to think of which ones will give examples without me letting the whole cat out of the bag.
All right.
No,
that's a bit tricky. We can talk later.
Yeah, no, I can give examples.
Okay.
We have a lot.
I'll use it.
Yeah.
Smart thinking, Jen.
Yeah, we have examples of operators that are consistently off route, for example.
Oh, okay. Tell us a bit more about that then.
And they are competing unfairly with the people who are compliant, because they can carry more,
they're not taking
livestock.
a longer way?
No, they're not. They're taking a shorter way, and they can obviously take a larger combination. Well, they can't, but they do take a larger combination onto roads that they shouldn't, and therefore can carry more livestock.
To the best of your knowledge, has this been raised with the relevant agency here in Western Australia?
Yes.
Has there been any follow-up?
I think there has been follow-up, but it hasn't been, I guess, as robust as we would like, and to the point, it hasn't had an impact on the practice and the activity.
Yep. All right. Now, all the issues you raise, except for the affluent disposal, is common across all sectors of the industry, particularly in all facets and all sectors of our industry. There's no argument about that. But I'm very keen to see what would be the associations, I'll get it right now because it used to be called the Livestockies, LRTA WA. So the views of the association, how would we stop the undercutting? And this is obviously from company to company. We're talking about when we talk about undercutting. What's the association's view on how that would look? What does it need?
Well, I think the principal thing is a consistency of compliance. We do need, the rules are there. The compliant operators are doing their best. They're investing a lot of money in being compliant, and to have non-compliant people undercut them consistently is a really quite a large obstacle. And I think that would be their number one wish if they could, wave a wand.
So that would, because we know, and as you touched on, they're still out there doing things, and let alone the undercutting. Lack of inspectors on the road. Is that what the fix would be? One of the fixes?
It could be that. It could be a broader range of sanctions available to the regulators. We're obviously big supporters of the WA accreditation system, but it could have some tweaks, you know, and that we're in the process of doing that, and it remains to be seen whether the outcome will provide that flexibility to the regulators. But at this point in time, the only options they have is to remove a person's accreditation, which means they can't operate. And I think the department is probably reluctant to do that because that's a fairly drastic step. So there should be some other sanctions that can be applied that...
Can I, sorry Jen, can I just... you know, like, we want you to go out there. I know how the WA accreditation system's set up. I was part of the working group when fatigue management came. I know all the history. I know where all the skeletons are buried too. But anyway, I'm saying that this is what gives me the screaming abdabs. So we have governments of all colours wanting our transport industries to comply to all this red tape. And we want you to make sure you do even more, and there's going to be a cost, and how dare you talk about cost recovery. Then you get the rat bag element that can go out there and thumb their nose and flip the bird to the government and all that, and then they have the audacity to tell the good guys and girls that, oh, we don't really want to take away their right to operate, so they can keep going out there cutting the guts out of it and taking your work. Here's another one. I'm on a tangent now. I'm off from it. Main roads. I invited Main Roads, didn't I, Jerry? Said, I want to hear from WA Main Roads. They refused. Oh, man, if I was a minister, we'd get some things sorted out in this state. Unfortunately, I'm not. And there's a queue out to the minister. Why would the Main Roads refuse to come to a road transport inquiry? So I'm sorry, I cut you off because you see, all that message is, you good guys, you keep spending money. The bottom of the swill tank, you just keep doing what you do, and we don't want to hurt you because we might put you out of business. Sorry, you were halfway through answering my question.
Well, I think, you know, just to sum that up, if there was a broader range of sanctions, then that would be an easier thing for the regulators to do, to work with these ones that seem to think compliance isn't a priority.
So, Jan, from the association's point of view, what are a broader range of sanctions if we now have some? I don't want to put you on the spot, sorry, you know what I'm like. But if there's something now that can take away the right to operate, but no one's going to police it unless they bump into someone along the way. They don't act on information coming through the telephone. That doesn't happen. So what is the association's view of broader sanctions? Chuck them in jail? Send them overseas? What do we do?
No, probably not quite that drastic, but I think there are things like, you know, increased supervision, more regular audits. At the same time, I think there should be some benefit for the people who are complying. So there could be a graded system for the people who are, you know, say A-grade operators who, you know, do their audits properly. They haven't got infringement notices to their name. They could get some concessions along the way, like less frequent audits, for example, or something that actually gives them a bit of a tick for doing the right thing and perhaps puts a bit more money back in their pocket. There's probably two sides to it. There is doing something for the operators that are complying and trying to do the right thing, and also applying some sanctions to those that are clearly not doing the right thing.
Okay. I'm losing faith more and more. No, I'll tell you why I say that, Jeb, because this industry, this magnificent industry, has fed and educated so many Australians for generations. And it just irks me to think that, you know, all the problems that we hear and we listen to, these are not new problems. I could shut my eyes, and I say this on the Eastern Seaboard. Oh, here's the plus. Thank God we're not on the Eastern Seaboard, and Yogi, he operates over there, he'd be able to tell us. I couldn't think of anything worse.
Well, we agree with that.
But I'm saying that, and I'm not saying it's all rainbows and unicorns over here by any chance, but I'm just saying if we shut our eyes, all of us that have been around this industry so long, and all the arguments are the same, or the dramas are the same. Oh, in WA, we've thrown in another one in the mix 20 years ago in fatigue management, which we didn't have, and performance-based standards. But everything else is still the same. So, on a brighter note, if the association had the opportunity, you've made it very clear in terms of what needs to be done. On another issue, and I do want to raise this, and your industry was front and centre, and I know that Frank Marley and I have had many spars over the years, and we've also had coffees together, so there's no dramas about that. Fatigue management with your industry, because your industry is unique, because of the animal husbandry dramas on the end of the day. How's the system going here? And I'm with you all the way, and sorry, Sal, but there's no way known we want the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator here. He knows my views. Do we need to tweak the fatigue management here in Western Australia?
Well, I think our view would be that we're reasonably happy with how it operates here. What we have an issue with, and this is to do with the national system, is that currently we've taken 1.5 million sheep to the east.
This calendar year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a short trip just inside the South Australian border. But once we go over the border, we have to comply with the national fatigue arrangements and have to keep on complying with it for 7 days when we come back in. As far as I'm aware, if you intend to go back again.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, right.
And that creates something of an issue for us,
it does.
And we've tried to negotiate a better outcome for something that's just a short trip, and we might be at the starting blocks now, but it's been a long process, and one of those issues that is frustrating because the people who can make a decision don't seem to understand the significance of it to the efficiency of the industry and the animal welfare.
And I suppose on my last comment, I've dribbled a little bit over time, but is it the view of your association that this grand industry has a unified voice in Canberra? And I have to say that because I work in the federal sphere. The industry.
Yeah, to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure that I can speak on behalf of the association in relation to that, but as a casual observer, I'd very much doubt it.
That's fine, Jan. And thank you for that. And it goes back to in summary, we're all at the same train station. If we can all get on one train, we might even get heard. Wouldn't that be nice? Jan, can I thank you to the association? Thank you very, very much for coming along today. And as always, it's great to hear from you.